Hello, my loves. Welcome to Be for Vibrant. My name is Kellyanne, and welcome to our Compassionate Collective's Perfectionist Recovery reading. Now, this is for those of you who are perfectionists or have been perfectionists, identify as having tried to make your own world as perfect as possible and are starting to recover from the uh, really strong beliefs and behaviors and habits that you've gotten into that have made living a full, fulfilling, joyful life kind of impossible. Perfection for me and perfectionism in my life has made me rigid and cold and shut people down and shut myself down before things actually got good because they weren't good enough from the get-go. And if that resonates with you, then welcome. I'm glad you found me here. I would love for you to subscribe if you would like more of these card readings. I've got one for people pleasers, one for highly sensitive people, and I'm doing these three themed readings once a month to give us an insight into where we've been, where we are now, and what we can look forward to. It's essentially like a past, present, future reading, but I am not the type to do fortune telling in the sense that I'm, making predictions about what's going to happen. I truly believe that it doesn't hold that much power to try to predict the future. More so, it's better to acknowledge and accept how some of the patterns from the past are affecting us in the present, because the present is our point of power and tells us which way the future is going to go. And I just ended up reading um, what's the name? I'm so bad with names. Is it Octavia Butler? Octavia Butler's essay on rules for predicting the future. Somebody correct me on that because I know it's something like that. But they made the essay into this beautiful, colorful little cosmic book and just read it and am feeling so aligned with that understanding of like, you know, uh, predicting the future is difficult to do, but all you can do is recognize the patterns from history and recognize the ways, the consequences of how they're enacting in our present moment. And I think for those of us who have been perfectionists, we've been taking notes. We've been taking notes about how things have been going. And if you're watching this, you might be coming up short on a really honest and clear assessment of what those notes are trying to tell you. So I'm hoping that this helps to confirm some of the things that you already know, clarify some of the things that you haven't felt really sure about, and pose some challenges. I used to finish this my little spiel with and give you the confidence to move forward and take the next steps, which I hope that it does that as well. But I think it's more important to pose challenges and to frame up top that this reading is going to challenge you. There are going to be things that you likely don't love hearing, but needed to hear. And that's what I'm here for, is to frame the things that you don't necessarily enjoy hearing in the most gently firm way possible so that you know that it is what it is. We're here with the truth now, and don't beat yourself up about it. Because I think that's another perfectionist tendency is to really beat oneself up about anything, about everything. We find every little thing to be an opportunity to beat oneself up. So I'm telling you, don't. Just simply don't. Um, I also asked the Mood Tarot to help us with some of the disgustingly relatable messages that come through because they make me giggle, they make me laugh. And I believe that perfectionists need a giggle, need to have a little bit of a laugh at ourselves um, through the recovery process because we've just been so hard on ourselves and so so serious about getting things right all the time. Ugh, that we need a little bit of joviality. We need a little bit of silliness to get us out of it. But aside from that, we're gonna have like first message, last message from the Mood Tarot. And then we're also in the middle going to have our where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going from the Caroline Meese archetype cards. They're connected with a project that she created based on Jungian archetypes. And those Jungian archetypes she took from like 8 and blew them up into 80. So through sacred contracts, the idea that we come into this world with certain contracts that we fulfill divinely through our spiritual journey. We have some archetypes here that I believe we all can relate to. So this is a general reading. Chew the fruit, swallow it down, feel its nourishment, spit out the seeds. Spit out the seeds and any part that doesn't work for you because as general readings go, not every message is going to be for you or is going to make sense to you right away. So this is also to say, like, chew the fruit, and if there are any leftovers, maybe pop it in the freezer and save it for later, put it on a watch later playlist so that you can come back to this video and you can try again to notice some subtle shifts in the perspective that you've had, as well as some uh, subtle rearrangement of some of the messages and how they sit in your body. And I promise you, for those of you who have seen the people pleaser recovery card reading and the highly sensitive people card reading, I shuffled the cards. I let the cards tell me what's what. And we have so many repeats. We have the artist again, we have the bully again, we have the messiah again, and we have the judge again. So this is also just to say that if you're a highly sensitive person, if you're a people pleaser, you likely have some crossover with this perfectionism because there's a layer of trying to do things right for other people or noticing what's going wrong before anybody else does because you're so highly sensitive that you're just trying to make the world a better place and for other people. For other people in like a you better like this and you better appreciate this kind of way. Perfectionism shows up in many forms, but I believe that it has a great people pleaser overlap. So take that for what you will. And I suggest going and watching those videos as well if they call to you, if those highly sensitive and people-pleasing identities resonate with you as well. But we're going to be focusing on these um, uh, 6 specific identities and talking about how we have embodied our perfectionist, how we are recovering through that perfectionism now, and what the future holds if we continue to empower ourselves through some of the changes that we need to make into other levels and other layers of identifying with the healed version of um, whoever is underneath this perfectionist that we've been embodying for a while. But we're going to start with our silly message of the day, our silly message of the month, actually, for the month of February, which is the Queen Bish of Mind Bullets. If you're familiar with tarot, this is the Queen of Swords. Swords is all about mental energy and the realms of the mind. So what she's saying in this card here with this very sort of stern face, like what a perfectionist she is. What she's saying here is, been there, done that, trust me, or become a kebab. There are consequences to not trusting the Queen Bish of Mind Bullets, apparently. For me, this is a message in ruling over the mind, ruling over the mental state that we take into not only this reading here, but also into our relationships. I think a lot of perfectionism stems from a lack of self-trust and feeling as though we need to prove our worth to other people. And this Queen of Swords wants to help us laugh at ourselves and the way that we try to make other people's lives better by making things perfect around us, but we inevitably make our lives worse by always criticizing ourselves, always considering that, if we're not perfect, then we're fools and we're failures. For the Queen of Swords, there are the two sides of the sword. There's zero or 100. There's you're either one thing or you're the total opposite. And it's really debilitating to move forward from that place. So I want us to take a second before I get into these cards and just say to ourselves, just recognize and affirm for ourselves, I do not have to understand everything the first time I hear it. I don't have to be successful at every endeavor the first time I reach for it. I don't have to do things right all the time in order to do them well. And I am neither a fool nor a failure for simply trying. The mindset that the Queen of Swords wants us to come at this reading with is the understanding that we're building a relationship with whoever's on the other side of this perfectionistic persona. So whoever your inner perfectionist is, greet them now and let them know that throughout this card reading, we're going to be having a conversation with them and about the way that their rigidness is affecting our lives, as in all of the yous, all of the me's that are in here, our us, this us, our lives. So let your inner perfectionist know I'm talking to you, and I don't hate you. I love you. That's why I'm giving you my attention right now. All right. Where have we been? Here are some of the archetypes for some of the perfectionist recovery hurdles that we have already jumped through. And some of it is worthy of celebrating, and some of it is simply for us to be really clear about and confirm, like, yes, this is something that I have been working on. So that's the intention for this section here, okay? So we have the artist and the bully are our first two here. The light attribute of the artist is expressing a dimension of life that is just beyond the five senses, inspiring others to see life symbolically. For the shadow attributes of the artist, we've got using talent as an excuse to mistreat others, posing as a starving artist to elicit pity. Now, I already have thoughts about this, but I'm going to move into the bully as well because I think that we can combine these efforts here. The bully light attributes include highlights your tendency to intimidate others, helps you confront the inner fears that bully you. Shadow attribute conceals deep fears behind verbal or physical abuse. Now, this is the shadow side that I was feeling immediately with the artist here using talent as an excuse to mistreat others, conceals deep fears behind verbal or physical abuse. For both the artist and the bully, they have this deep-seated need to feel feel understood. You know, the bully is misunderstood, the artist is misunderstood. There is this deep desire to be understood, and I think it stems from the light attributes of the artist bully together, which is a tendency to intimidate others from what inspires you beyond the five senses. What I mean by that is a lot of the times we come into the perfectionist persona because we're actually visionaries. We're visionaries, we're leaders, we're engineers, we're architects. We're people who can see things and sense things before it in its perfection, in its perfect finalized state, before other people even have a fucking clue what we're talking about. We also have a hard time expressing ourselves and expressing from that place that we jump to where we're like, in my mind, this is complete. Back, 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 step, 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 back, 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 until the point where we can get to, square one and say, okay, now let me explain it to somebody else so I can navigate them toward, step final phase, step 10. The difficulty that we have with explaining ourselves or expressing the fullness and the totality of those visions that we have and the sort of architectural structures of how a system at work should work, or how a set of family rules should help everyone function. Those kinds of things, like we can see them in their fullness and they might be difficult to express or explain to other people. And so either we get intimidated by trying, so we keep all of that to ourselves and we just go, nobody's gonna get it. Like, no, you wouldn't understand. And we sit in that sort of like high and mighty place. Okay, here's using talent as an excuse to mistreat others. Okay. Coming from that place of like, I have this talent and this skill for seeing what other people can't see in its completed state, and you wouldn't understand, which, brings us back to what the Queen of Swords, the Queen Bish of Mind Bullets, was trying to persuade us to pay attention to, which is if something is not perfect and people cannot conceive of and understand that perfection, then they're losers and failures and fools. That is a mistreatment that people don't deserve, including ourselves. Because I think we also have a tendency, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, my perfectionism came from my dad always making me feel like I'm a big old dummy for not understanding things right away or for not doing things right, the right way, the first time. And so what can happen is, even as a perfectionist, if other people have the vision and they refuse to share it with you, or they share it with you and you don't, it doesn't click for you right away. They're using a different language. They're using a different texture of how to get there than you can conceive of. Then you bully yourself. You tell yourself that you are the fool and that you are the one who is deserving of ridicule, which is a really tough place to be. So it's a good thing that it's in the past, that this artist bully is a place that we have come from. And now I don't think that it's all the way gone, but I will say that it is something that we at least can acknowledge about ourselves, and we can notice it more easily in the present moment because we've studied this history of I don't always treat people who appear to me to be dummies in a very nice way, including myself. And the alternative is I often mistreat other people by virtue of gatekeeping and withholding because I'm so tired of explaining myself and people not getting it that at this point in my life, I don't want to explain anymore. Sometimes I just go, you know what, you wouldn't get it. And instead of saying, I'm not sure how to explain this, so I'm going to do the best that I can, and you let me know what questions you have or where I lose you. We just go, you wouldn't get it, and I'm just gonna go do this by myself. I'm just gonna go be the only one to work on this project because I'm the only one who could get it, and I'm the only one who could do it well. And that's how we end up in group projects where we do 100% of the work. Because maybe underneath the exterior of perfectionist is just a visionary who wants to be able to express the truest version of whatever you have in your mind or in your heart that you believe would be the best way to solve a problem or the best way to address a boundary amongst, people in a group. The best way to navigate conflict in a relationship. There is a perfectionist layer there on top of the visionary architect engineer who knows how to do it and doesn't know how to explain how they got there. And that's a really tough place to be. So let's just breathe in that for a second. How tough it is to feel misunderstood. It's a pattern I've experienced. I'm raising my hand. It's a pattern that I've experienced my whole life. So uh, I'm right there with you if, you know, uh, getting the sense that people just can't come along for the ride because you don't even know where the seatbelts are. It can be really, really tough. And what's tougher is that we bully ourselves once we realize this, and I want us to stop this train of thought right now. We bully ourselves once we realize that it is our own doing that makes us feel so isolated and so overwhelmed and so overstimulated all the time by trying to do things the right way and people not being able to come along for the ride with us because we don't know how to get them there. We realize not having the skills, the communication skills, or the interpersonal skills, or the sort of conflict skills necessary to disagree with people and move from that place of disagreement about how to get there toward what the outcome you see is. Like there are many ways to achieve the outcome that you have in your mind and that you the plans that you envision, the outcome. There are many ways to get there, and sometimes it's even just the inability or the lack of capacity, the lack of bandwidth and attention that you're willing to give or that you're able to give to disagreeing with people on how to get there. And once we realize that we're the problem, the perfectionist in us goes, well, then that means that you're a failure. That means that you are worthy of being treated like a failure or a loser or like you're the problem. And so the bully cycles right back around, and we sort of intimidate ourselves out of trying to develop those skills to help us help other people see the vision and come along for the ride with us. What bullying does when we do it to ourselves is it produces shame. Guilt is useful information. Guilt is a useful emotion that tells us I feel responsible and accountable for how things played out. Shame tells us I am a bad person for the way that things played out. I am bad at this. I am bad at that. I am the person who is bad. It is intrinsic to me, the badness. And the bully is the one who's trying to instill in us, I am bad because I can't do this thing. What happens is guilt helps us recognize the areas where we have responsibility and where we can take responsibility. We can take responsibility for the skills that we lack because we can develop those skills. But when we have shame, shame shuts us down and makes us shun. Shame is something that we think is an effective social leverage for making people better. But in reality, shame is the thing that stigmatizes failure to relate. And it makes us vulnerable to the kind of thinking wherein we convince ourselves that because we are bad and that is inherent to us, that there's nothing that we can do about it. There's nothing we can do to change how bad we are. We're just bad. I'm just bad at explaining things. I'm just bad at this other thing. And maybe you laugh it off. Maybe you are self-deprecating about it. But the inner perfectionist goes, but I want to be better. But I want to be good at this thing. And so we're just like fighting ourselves. We're fighting that shame on the inside. And what I want us to do is to recognize what the Queen of Swords was trying to tell us is that, like, both sides of that sword, give us the 0 or 100 that makes us feel like there's sometimes no in between. Either I get it or I don't. Either I'm good or I'm bad. And that is not a realistic way to live life. That sets expectations that are so unreasonable. And we deserve better than that. You deserve better than that. So I think you already have this understanding or are open to it now and are developing this understanding because it's it's where we've come from. And where we're headed toward is this Avenger gossip. So interesting to have gossip and bully in here. Things that sound archetypes that sound like they're bad things. I've talked about this in other readings where it's like we have a lot of cards that sound bad, but are actually nuanced and more complex than just good or bad. Literally the thing that I was just talking about. So I want you to keep your mind open to the gossip being somebody who is an archetype that we can learn from in the same way that the bully is an archetype that we can learn from as well. So, where are we now? We've got the Avenger and the Gossip. The light attributes of the Avenger include desire to balance the scales of justice, righteousness on behalf of society or oneself. And the shadow attribute is resorting to violence in the name of a cause. Gossip. Gossip light attributes include awakens consideration for the feelings of others and honoring trust. Shadow attribute is thrives on the power of passing on private or secret information, betraying confidences. Now, as a recovering perfectionist, we like to have as much information as possible because that helps us to come to the most correct answer possible. And I think with the Avenger Gossip collaborate to tell us about where we're at right now, where we are in the present, is in this place of recognizing that the some of the I'm getting like visions of the protests against ICE and the violence that we're seeing enacted by the state on civilians. There is a re resorting to violence in the name of a cause that the Avenger witnesses in a way that is right now information gathering. So the gossip is the one who's taking in all of this information and gathering. What the perfectionist will do with all of the information that it's gathering is try to wait as long as possible before doing anything, before acting, because the perfectionist wants to be able to act right the first time. Now, what we want to get to is a place where we can balance scales of justice and we can act in the right way on behalf of people, on behalf of our neighbors, on behalf of our communities, on behalf of our friends and family, on behalf of what we believe is right for society. How we believe society should be. That kind of righteousness. We we want to get to a place where the perfectionist layers can be shed and we can take all of the rightness that perfectionism clings to and evolve into a place where we are acting on the rebalancing of a right relationship and what's right in society, like what's right morally, ethically, for us to create rules from and laws from that we all agree are the right thing to do. We want to be able to get to that place without the perfectionism, because the perfectionism embodies shame. The perfectionism embodies a sense of, I am wrong if I get something wrong, if I get an answer wrong. And the Avenger is like, there's no wrong way to pursue injustice so that we can rebalance the energies of what we're seeing and all of the actions that are unfolding so that we can get to a place where shame doesn't have a hold over us. And shame doesn't compel certain lower class white men to join a morally corrupt job in order to enact violence upon civilians who are wrong, who are doing the wrong thing according to whose standards. The Avenger is the one who has that inner sense of rightness, that inner sense of morality, and that inner integrity that tells them, I know exactly why this is wrong. And it goes beyond explanation too. I mean, there's kind of a knowing that the Avenger is able to embody and embrace without needing to explain oneself. And the perfectionist is one who absolutely knows, like, my biggest pet peeve is having to explain myself. So I would love to get to a point as a perfectionist in recovery to be able to not have to explain myself all the time. But that is less about explaining yourself to others. Ooh, it's 333 my time. Woo! Less about explaining yourself to others and more about not needing to explain yourself to yourself. I get the sense that we perfectionists really ride around in circles in our minds, trying to justify over and over and over and over again the actions that we take. Like, I find myself while I'm doing dishes, or while I'm cleaning the house, or while I'm doing something totally innocuous that I've likely been criticized for in the past by my critical parents for doing wrong. I find myself justifying my actions and justifying my choices within those actions. Why I decided to put the small spoons all together and the large spoons all together. Why it's better. Why it's right. And why it makes for a rule that when all of society comes together and agrees is right and acts upon, makes society better. Now, that's not to say that putting small spoons with small spoons and big spoons with big spoons is the actual takeaway here. The literal takeaway is we are trying to justify ourselves to imaginary others in our minds all the time. The intrusive thoughts that we have really separate us from the thinking of what's right and the knowing of what's right. And one is in here cycling through our minds, and the other comes from the body. The other comes from the somatic expression of our safety and our peace and our relaxation. We start to feel that we know what is right just by virtue of how our body responds to it, not by how well we can explain its rightness. And that's where the Avenger comes in. The Avenger is like, I want to be able to act on behalf of society and myself in a way that I don't feel requires explanation. If you see me doing this thing and you see the consequences, which are people coming together and people being safe and feeling safe and people getting their needs met, then you will know its rightness because you will know what is right just by witnessing the consequences of the choices that I've made. I don't need to explain them because they prove themselves. The gossip, here are the light attributes again, awakens consideration for the feelings of others. And the gossip also honors trust. Here's the part where we are now, where not only do we not want to exhaust ourselves with the sort of explanation of like why what we're seeing is wrong and why the perfectionist in us wants to make it right with that strangling chokehold sort of energy, but also why that perfectionist needs to develop a self-trust and develop a trust in others so that we can continue to evolve and recover from the perfectionist personas that we have. Because what we need to be able to do in the same way that there is the Avenger archetype that we are working to embody, that doesn't have to explain because you just see it in their actions. You see it in the energy behind their actions and their choices, that there is rightness and righteousness in what they're doing. We need, the gossip is teaching us how to honor other people with our trust when we see them doing things that are done from that place of rightness. It requires us to differentiate between what we believe is right and what we've been taught is the right way. Because gossips will pool information from many different sources and facilitate the interweaving of social story in order to create a collective understanding of what is right. And the point is not to have like a perfect story, a perfect weaving of what is right, but to be able to honor that the right way, like we talked about it, like we can all have like the same, right end goals, right outcomes, but we need to be able to honor each other with trust that the way that we achieve those outcomes and the way that we achieve those goals, the how, is going to look different from person to person. And especially when it comes to communities that we've built trust in, relationships that we've built trust in, what we need to start doing and what we're working on right now, because this is where we're at, this is showing us what's going on in the present. What we're trying to work on right now is being able to honor the feelings that other people have about the right way to do things. It is only by going behind their back to question them and doing a sort of triangulation of like, I'm not talking directly to you, I'm talking around you, about you. It is only by that triangulation and that like, that passing on of information in like a private or secretive way, in that secretive, kind of shady, I'm afraid to have conflict, so I'm just going to ask somebody else and be indirect about it. That is the way that we dishonor trust that we are building. And that is also the way that not only in our personal, private, one-on-one relationships do we uh, um, betray the confidences that have been made in us, but it's also how, on a larger scale, we allow the people and the systems that are currently negotiating power on our behalf all the time. It's how we let those in power win. It's how we let the fucking pedophiles win now that we are certain that they're all fucking pedophiles. I mean, we already knew this. Women could have told you this a long time ago. That the infantilization of women and the fear of the power of adult, grown, mature women and emotional maturity is uh is what power fears. Because the power as it stands, the patriarchal colonialist power as it stands now, wants us to be fighting each other and wants us to be questioning each other and remain emotionally immature and put each other down and call each other girls and bitches instead of honoring and respecting that the things that we're seeing might be different from the way that we would approach problems, but that if somebody says they have the same outcome in mind, we trust them to get there on their own. That is how we disrupt the expectation that the social structures that are around us that try to hold power over us. That is how we disrupt that. Because our individual relationships, especially when it comes to perfectionism, our individual relationships mirror what we have been taught by the society that was built by white, privileged, wealthy men. So what we do because of that power over is we imitate that relationship amongst the relationships with the people that we love, especially between women. I mean, I'll just bring in my own personal shit here that I didn't have access to that I needed to land before I was able to do this reading. And I'm realizing now, I was like, I tried to do the people pleaser and the highly sensitive and the perfectionist readings all at the same time and just had them at the beginning of February, but I could sense that there was something that there was a shoe that needed to drop for me to be able to do this particular reading, which is why it's coming out later. And it was the conflict that I was in two of my relationships with white friends, with white women who were not able to disrupt that perfectionist standard of how we relate to each other and honoring that the way that we achieve the same outcome is going to look different and sometimes cause disagreement or appear to be disrespect, when in reality, no disrespect was intended. And what I've found is that because of the, I believe, cruel and carceral way that they handled our conflict as people I've been two friends that I've been in relationships with for eight-ish years, almost a decade with these two people, because of the cruel and carceral way that they treated the conflict, they are mirroring and they are imitating the same kind of social constructs that have been perpetuated by the patriarchy and colonialism. The same kind of perfectionistic standards, which tell us that we should feel ashamed of ourselves or feel ashamed of each other or of having ever trusted the other person. I feel ashamed of having ever trusted you for not hurting me or not disrespecting me or not ever disagreeing with me. You should have never disagreed with me because then that shows what? That we're different people, that we have different ideas about how to achieve the same outcomes. What happened in those conflicts was a betrayal of confidence and a dishonoring of the trust that we had built over the course of nearly a decade. So where we are now is coming to a point where we can avenge the versions of ourselves who used to over-explain and used to, shut things down before they even got good, before we even got all the information. I think that's what the gossip leads us to as well, is hearing one piece of information and then running with it. Like the good side of the gossip is getting lots of information. The bad side of the gossip is going too far in either direction, either getting so much information and waiting too long to collect more and more evidence that you miss your window of opportunity to act, or not gathering enough information, only listening to one or two people, and maybe even listening to the wrong people, as in talking to everybody but the main person that you're involved in conflict with, or the main person whose idea it was and whose decision it was that was passed down to a work team that you're on. Going and talking to everybody else but the person who is responsible for whatever it is that you're confronting makes the gossip not as valuable, makes the information that you are pooling not as valuable. And for that reason, we try to avenge the disrespect and the dishonor that we believe that we're seeing. And that, in many cases, with how the state and police treat marginalized communities and are involved in conflict resolution in lieu of social workers, I'll never know why. I do know why. It's because of colonization and white supremacy. Okay, I know why. Anyway, I don't get it, but I know why, but I don't understand. And I choose not to understand because that's not something that I will ever want to understand. If you feel me. Um, in lieu of where we are now is choosing between that story of like avenging wrongs that we think have happened by only collecting a little information, or choosing to stay too long in the information collecting mode before acting on something, which makes you a really ineffective avenger because then you're not acting in the present. You're acting after everything has been said and done. You're acting outside of the realm of when your actions would be the most potent and would have the most power to change or correct something and drive it back toward what is right. Where we are now is learning a collective rightness and renegotiating how right relationship looks by honoring the trust that we've developed between ourselves and our friends or our partners or the people that we're in community with, as well as not betraying those confidences by traveling so far outside of, sometimes we need a little bit of perspective, and sometimes we need to go to the right person who is going to play the avenging gossip, who is going to tell you where you did wrong and where you went wrong. And, you know, I take responsibility for in at least one of the conflicts and one of the relationships that I have seen blow up in the past couple of weeks. I take responsibility for having seen this person deal with conflict in such a way over and over again that she just abandoned the relationship and abandoned the relationship and abandoned relationship and was okay with just grieving it, treating it like it's dead and grieving it and moving on. And I wasn't the avenging gossip in that instance, which is where we are now, learning to be the avenging gossip, learning to be that person who asks, what was the right way to have addressed this conflict? And did you take responsibility? How have you taken responsibility? What were you accountable to in the conflict that happened between you and the friend that you just had a breakup with? Do you feel like that rupture was worthy of killing an entire relationship? Or maybe was there an opportunity for learning to happen and for healing to happen and for deeper togetherness to come from this moment? Those are the questions that I didn't ask. And so I was on the receiving end of the consequences of not doing the right thing, not being the avenging gossip who sought information from the right source about the right way to do things and the just way to do things. A way to do things that embodies justice. This bird, there was a bird that's sitting out here doing this, looking at me, just looking over their shoulder like, are you talking to me? Sorry to interrupt. We're learning in the present to become not only better witnesses and better information collectors, but to become more discerning with how we treat and honor the relationships and the groups that have built trust with us. Yeah, because we get triggered for sure. As perfectionists, we just want all the answers and we just want them right now. Or we want people to have not hurt us in the first place. And the realistic thing, the realistic, reasonable expectation to have is everyone that you love will continue to hurt you forever. Ta-da! It's magic. Ta-da! Oh, the answers have been given to us. Ah, and the answer is we are going to continue to build trust with people who are going to continue to hurt us. And it's, in fact, how we respond to the hurt that does happen, the unintended hurt that does occur. It's how we respond to it that builds deeper trust, that helps us to honor the confidences that have been made in our relationships. Okay. Where is this going? Where is this leading us? And what does the final mood tarot card want to help us understand? Where are we going? We've got the Judge and the Messiah cards here. Judge and Messiah. First things first, the Messiah light attribute includes serving humanity with humility, and the shadow attribute includes exaggerated belief that you are the only means through which a cause can succeed. Hello again, perfectionists with the group projects. Ugh. Ugh, and myself, and ugh, the perfectionist tendency to think that we were the only ones who can do things right. The judge, the judge archetype. Light attributes include balancing justice and compassion, managing the fair distribution of power. Ooh, we were just talking about this. This is a really lovely evolution. Shadow attributes for the judge. Offering only destructive criticism, misusing business, legal, or criminal authority. So, misusing authority and offering only destructive criticism are the shadow attributes for the judge. Now, I want to really ground us in the way that we just came from the gossip and the Avenger into this Messiah judge here, because the judge talks directly about the Avenger and the gossip, balancing justice, okay, that's the Avenger, and compassion. A gossip, if they are embodying the light attributes of the gossip, what they are doing is awakening consideration for the feelings of others. Now, women who gathered information back in the day got labeled as gossips because what patriarchal men and colonization decided was that women with information that can put men who are discompassionate and who are causing suffering out of power, they need to be destroyed. Those women need to be taken down a notch. And so we need to label them with something negative. We need to label them as gossip, and we need gossip to be a bad thing. So, like I said before, we have these associations, but the associations we need to question where they came from and who was the first to start creating these associations and start telling society how to feel about these particular roles that people play, these particular archetypes that folks embody in order to create a well-rounded society. Because we can't all play the same roles and we can't all do the same things. But if there's one or two women in every single society, in every village, in every town, in every city, if there's one or two women who are always committed to the witnessing of suffering and the benevolent desire to do something about it, and what they do is collect information, they collect social information on behalf of that cause, then the avenging gossip is the one who seeks justice through the information that they've collected. And they awaken consideration in the people in power for the feelings of others, the feelings of those who are not in power. Which is why such a huge wedge was driven between those in power through authority, through the misuse of authority, and those who held power like matchmakers for building relationships based on the social information that kept women from dating and marrying the kinds of men who through the grapevine, through social channels, these matchmakers we're hearing are philanderers or adulterers or alcoholics or physically abusive and abusers. They kept people from building community with folks who are guilty of being responsible for hurting other people in a way that can be seen through patterns, in the way that can be seen through patterns of conflict and harm. The judge is where we're headed. Once the avenging gossip can really step into our own, and we're no longer thinking perfectionistically, we're thinking in a human way about the standards by which compassion and justice drive us toward the right thing and doing the right thing, then we can embody the judge by managing a fair distribution of power. But it's the judge that is influenced by the Messiah who is able to put this spin on, because the thing that we're afraid of is having more people in power, having more leaders. And like I said at the beginning, if you are a perfectionist, then you are likely a leader in some capacity or have been a natural born leader in your own life, whether it's of your family or of your friend groups or of, channels at work. Um, the thing that we fear if we're doing justice and compassion the right way is people who are imitating justice and compassion getting a hold of power. And then that power consuming these people and the authority becoming something that they mismanage and abuse, misusing business, legal, or criminal authority as one of the shadow attributes of the judge. What we What we fear is the people who get into power not using their authority for good, not using their authority for the right reasons, and not being able to honor them with trust, honor them with our confidences, and uh, you know, rely on them to continue to serve a cause that we put them in power to manage. This is where the Messiah comes in. Light attributes again, serving humanity with humility. Shadow attribute, exaggerated belief that you are the only means through which a cause can succeed. So, where are we headed? We're headed in our individual lives as recovering perfectionists toward trusting other people to know the right way to do things just as much as we do. And trusting that if we ask other people and we're curious about how would you approach this, that we are going to find new perspectives that trip us up on purpose. Because what we really want to do is get out of that self-critical place of like, I better do this right the first time, and get back into the habit of saying, everybody has a different way of achieving the same means, and I'm going to listen to a few of them because maybe I haven't been creative enough in thinking about how to do this. Maybe there's another way. Or maybe there's a skill that I haven't built yet and that I haven't developed enough yet to be able to get other people to help me pursue this goal and to get other people to help me see this goal become a reality. We have this exaggerated belief that we're the only ones who could get it right and that we're only the only ones who can be trusted to know what right is. And so on our path toward disrupting that energy, the avenging gossip is learning in this moment what it means to really adapt to the information that we're receiving and also adaptively honor the people who have the same values, the same integrity, and the same goals as we have. Because the other part is, serving humanity with humility. We need to have the humility to know that we are not the only ones who can figure the shit out and can do things in a way that is going to meet the goal. It doesn't always need to be the right way. It just needs to be for the right reasons. And that's where the judge needs that extra little hard pill to swallow is that I'm serving justice and compassion through humility, through knowing that maybe what looks like suffering to me is somebody else's challenge that they are choosing to face. And I don't have to save them from it, and I don't have to teach them other ways to do it. Like the perfectionist in us will go up to people at work or in our families or, to our partners, our poor partners. We'll go up to our partners or to people at work and say, hey, let me show you the right way to do that. Because what we think we're seeing is people suffering at their own hand, at the hands of a different way to get something done. Ah, I know. I know if you're watching this that you can relate to either somebody having come up to you and said, "Hey, let me show you how I do it," which is covertly, "Let me show you the right way to do it." Or you going up to somebody well-meaning and totally compassionate, but misinterpreting that the without the humility that you need to interpret compassion in the right way, you're just assuming that everybody's suffering because whenever you see them not doing things the way that you would do it. Hmm. So that's where we're headed. That's the direction that we're headed in. And, we have to ground ourselves in the avenging gossip first in order to be able to meet up with that place of humility and that place of honoring authority and fair distribution of power so that we can balance justice and compassion and disrupt the shame that comes from, doing things in such a way that we're trying to get the other people to see our way before we're even curious about their way. But right now we're in this of Avenger Gossip stage of life, and we're moving toward that Messiah judge. And one of the ways that we can do that is, here's our final message here to give us a little laugh, is the Hermit card from the tarot, from the major arcana in tarot, um, which in this deck is called Retreat Yourself, meaning take a retreat. Get out of your own head. Get out of your normal surroundings. Retreat. Step the fuck back. And also treat yourself kindly. Like, oh, look, another rabbit hole is what the hermit is saying as they're looking from atop their high tower where they've gathered all of this knowledge. No, maybe that's the Hierophant who's the one who's gathered all the knowledge. I'm like, maybe I'm mixing up my my major arcanas here. But still, I mean, you see that they're on top of something. There's a cliff here, and then we see the tops of these mountains. Not here, not where he's level with these mountains or he's amidst them. He's above these mountaintops, meaning it's a long way to fall for those recovering perfectionists to acknowledge that we don't know everything and that sometimes the perspective that we've taken because we've been conditioned to believe that perfectionism is the right approach to doing things the right way and to developing a social, cultural, interpersonal, very personal sense of rightness. We need we need to take another look at it. We think that the perfectionist is, atop their tower at the top of the mountain that they're on because they've earned it and because they've deserved it. Well, if you only climb one mountain, then you only have one perspective, right? If you were culturally conditioned or conditioned by family growing up or guardians to believe that there is a certain specific way to do things, and if you don't do it the right way the first time, um, then yeah, you might only have one version of what's right. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it is the best way. You gotta climb down that mountain, get into the valley, retreat yourself, retreat into the valley, get off your high horse. And that's why I said, like, I asked for cards that are going to make us laugh. So I'm hoping that this is making you go, oh gosh, okay. Because truly, what what we want to end here with is the sense that perfectionism isn't the right way. And that's why we're trying to recover from it. We're trying to find ways to get away from the perfectionistic tendencies that we've developed. Because it's not fair to us and it's not fair to other people. The way that we treat them when we are embodying that perfectionist is pretty rude, pretty mean, pretty abysmal, pretty disrespectful, dishonoring, lacks humility. Ha. So, what we get to do is retreat, come off of our high horse, our high mountain top, and lay in the valley not try so hard. Not try so hard for just a week, for just a month. Not try so hard for just a short period of time so that we can, in that sense, find another rabbit hole, find another pathway toward the place that we're trying to get to. Otherwise, we just, cycle right back toward that artist bully who mistreats the self and mistreats others for what's not getting done right. And we don't want to go back there. But if you feel stuck and you feel like maybe perfectionism is kind of a pit that you've tried to climb out of and it just feels so dark and sticky for you and you're not even sure where to begin, like, Kellyanne, this is all great advice and everything. Beautiful guidance. Well said. But I don't know for me where to even start. Then for $5 a month on my Patreon, you can access an entire series that I created of videos, meditations, challenges, lots of different resources on getting unstuck and being able to get yourself out of the what I call the pit. The pit of despair, where you're like, I don't know. Maybe I should throw my hands in the air. Maybe I should just give up on myself because it's so hard. It's so hard. It's too hard, Kellyanne. I don't even know. Yes, you do. You're watching this because you believe in something else. You believe in better for yourself. And if you need a little help with that, my Patreon has a socialist structure to it where there are lots of different tiers, levels of contribution as low as $5 and ranging up to a couple $100 because I don't know, maybe some rich people are watching this right now and have enough wealth to understand that if you pledge at a higher amount than $5 or $20, then it is going to make more of my work accessible to people who can't afford it. And I'm hoping that those people find me too. But if you're the kind of person who can only afford $5 or $10 a month to access these resources that are going to help unstick you, then that's for you. And that's exactly who I made it for. I also, if you enjoyed this reading and you want a more personal, private one, I also give one-on-one readings that are 1 hour or 2 hours. You can book it through Zoom Scheduler, which is linked in the description for this video, and you are going to get a recorded copy of the card reading that we do together. You're going to get to ask all of your questions, and you're going to get the same lovely, compassionate, gently firm attention that I have given everybody, you now, and everybody who's watching this general guidance. But if you want it a little more concentrated, a little more focused on just you, I'm here for that too. All right, y'all. I love you so much. You're deserving of all the imperfect love you desire. And I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day. And I hope you subscribe. Ah!